Did you know that Quantum of Solace began filming without a completed script? That's right, one of the most expensive James Bond films ever made, with a budget of $200 million, started production with only the bare bones of a story. When the film's writer turned in his draft, he literally picked up his paycheck, grabbed his protest placard, and joined the Writers Guild strike outside the studio. It's like trying to build a skyscraper without a blueprint, or cooking a Michelin star meal without a recipe. This baffling decision is just the beginning of how Hollywood managed to stumble with Daniel Craig's crucial second outing as 007. From a rushed production schedule to a director who admitted he wasn't even a Bond fan, Quantum of Solace's journey from the highly anticipated sequel to franchise disappointment reveals something crucial about making Bond films. Sometimes, the worst failures come from trying to fix what isn't broken. Before we dive into the fatal flaws that derailed this movie's potential, a real quick ask that if you're new to this channel or haven't subscribed yet, take a second to hit the subscribe button now. It's one small click for you, but a huge deal for us. Now, let's perform an autopsy on what really went wrong with Quantum of Solace. Reason number 1, the writer's strike curse. The most damaging blow to Quantum of Solace came before a single frame was shot, with the 2007-2008 Writers Guild of America strike hit Hollywood. It left the production in an impossible position. As producer Barbara Broccoli later admitted, we basically started shooting without a script, which is never a good idea. Writer Paul Haggis had turned in his draft mere hours before the strike began, leaving the production with what Daniel Craig called the bare bones of a script. A desperate scramble followed, with Craig and director Marc Forster attempting to piece together scenes and dialogue on set, a task Craig himself admits he wasn't qualified for, stating bluntly, "A writer, I am not." This fundamental flaw ripples through every aspect of the film. Characters appear in locations without clear motivations, plot threads are picked up and then abandoned, and the story lacks the sharp focus that made Casino Royale so compelling. It's as if the film is constantly playing catch-up with itself, never quite sure where it's going next. Perhaps most telling, even the film's producers have admitted that the lack of a proper script was disastrous. Michael G. Wilson later confessed that the film didn't get Bond's journey right, because they got too wound up on plot rather than keeping to the story. The distinction is crucial. While the film technically has a plot involving water rights and corrupt regimes, it lacks a compelling story that audiences could emotionally invest in. When your lead actor is trying to write dialogue between takes and your director is attempting to construct narrative arcs on the fly, something has gone terribly wrong with your blockbuster spy thriller. Reason number 2. Identity crisis. In trying to follow up on Casino Royale's success, Quantum of Solace suffers from a severe case of sequel syndrome. The film can't quite decide if it wants to be a direct continuation of Casino Royale's story or forge its own path. The result is a movie that feels both overly dependent on its predecessor and strangely disconnected from it. Bond's quest for revenge over Vesper's death should be emotionally gripping, but the film's choppy pacing and underdeveloped plot leave us watching a revenge story without the emotional weight it deserves. Even more puzzling was the decision to abandon the classic Bond formula that Casino Royale had so brilliantly modernized. Gone are the witty one-liners, the carefully paced seductions, and the gradual building of tension. Instead, we get a relentless string of action sequences that seem more inspired by the Bourne franchise than 007's rich legacy. Reason number 3, the Vanishing Villain. Let's talk about Dominic Greene, a Bond villain so forgettable that audiences were left wondering if they'd missed something. After Casino Royale gave us Mads Mikkelsen's menacing Le Chiffre, Quantum of Solace delivers a villain whose master plan involves controlling Bolivia's water supply. Don't blame actor Mathieu Amalric, he's trapped in a role that gives him nothing to work with. The best Bond villains are larger than life, with memorable quirks, grand schemes, and personal connections to 007. Greene has none of these. He rarely shares the screen with Bond, their confrontations lack tension, and his defeat comes with such little fanfare that the film doesn't even show us his final moments. He's found dead in the desert, killed off screen in what might be the least satisfying villain death in Bond history. Even worse, the film's attempt to build Quantum as a worthy successor to Spectre falls flat. The organization remains frustratingly vague, its members are barely seen, and its goals seem mundane compared to the world-ending schemes of classic Bond villains. Reason number 4, action overload. Director Marc Forster, known for character-driven dramas like Monsters Ball and Finding Neverland, seemed determined to prove he could handle action. The result? A Bond film that barely lets you catch your breath. The film opens with a car chase so frantically edited that it's nearly impossible to follow. This sets the tone for an exhausting series of action sequences that prioritize chaos over clarity. The average shot length in Quantum's action scenes is less than 2 seconds. Compare that to Casino Royale's masterful parkour sequence, where you could actually follow Bond's movements and feel the stakes of each jump. Forster admitted to being influenced by Paul Greengrass's Bourne films, but he missed what made those films work. While Bourne's shaky cam served its stories of a disoriented agent discovering his identity, Bond is supposed to be the epitome of cool precision. When you can't even tell what's happening in a fight scene, it doesn't matter how spectacular the stunts might be. Reason number 5. Creative disconnect. Perhaps the most baffling decision in Quantum of Solace's production was hiring a director who openly admitted he was not a Bond fan. Forster's approach to the material reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes 007 tick. The director's attempts to make Bond more artistic led to bizarre creative choices, like structuring action sequences around the 4 classical elements, or staging an opera scene that seems more focused on visual composition than advancing the plot. While there's nothing wrong with artistic ambition, Bond films work best when style serves story, not the other way around. This disconnect extends to the film's tone. Casino Royale found the perfect balance between gritty realism and classic Bond escapism. Quantum swings wildly between trying to be a serious revenge thriller and a standard action movie, never finding its footing in either genre. Reason number 6. Lost character development. One of Casino Royale's greatest strengths was how Bond was developed as a character, showing us how he became the agent we know. Quantum of Solace takes all that careful character building and essentially puts it on pause. Instead of exploring how Bond processes his grief over Vesper's death, the film reduces him to a blunt instrument of revenge. Gone is the complexity that made Craig's Bond so compelling. The way he could shift from brutal efficiency to suave charm, from emotional vulnerability to cold professionalism. In Quantum, he's just angry all the time. Even worse is how the film handles its supporting characters. Olga Kurylenko's Camille has potential as a woman pursuing her own vendetta, but her story feels disconnected from the main plot. Gemma Arterton's Agent Fields is introduced and killed off so quickly that her death carries no emotional weight. Even Jeffrey Wright's Felix Leiter, who shared such amazing chemistry with Craig in Casino Royale, is reduced to a few brief scenes. Reason number 7. Rushed pacing. At 106 minutes, Quantum of Solace is the shortest Bond film in the franchise's history. While a tight runtime isn't inherently bad, in this case it feels like crucial scenes are just missing. The film moves so quickly from location to location that we never get a sense of place. Bond bounces from Italy to Haiti, Austria to Bolivia, but these exotic locations feel like mere backdrops rather than fully realized settings. Compare this to Casino Royale's Montenegro sequences, where the location becomes a character in itself. Important plot points are rushed through or explained in hasty exposition. The film's climax, set in an exploding desert hotel, feels abrupt and anticlimactic. Even the final confrontation between Bond and Greene is over before it begins. When M asks Bond if he found what he was looking for, his curt yes feels hollow, because we never really understood what he was seeking in the first place. The future of the franchise. Despite its flaws, Quantum of Solace was not enough to derail Craig's tenure as Bond. The franchise would bounce back in spectacular fashion with Skyfall, proving that lessons were learned from Quantum's missteps. The film serves as a cautionary tale about what happens when a production rushes forward without a solid foundation. It proves that even with a talented cast, stunning locations, and a massive budget, a Bond film needs more than just spectacle, it needs a soul. But that's just our take. What did you think? Did Quantum of Solace deserve its harsh reception, or has time been kinder to this controversial entry in the Bond saga? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of these fantastic deep dives. Remember, not every Bond film can be a bullseye, but even a misfire can teach us a valuable lesson about what makes 007 great. This video was made by movie fans for movie fans.